Welcome to our second lecture covering the orientation materials for this course. During the first lecture, I went over the PowerPoint materials, and so now I'm going to go through the Canvas course and also give a few pointers along the way. So this is what you see first of all when you enter Canvas. You won't have this fuchsia border at the bottom, but otherwise it should look pretty much the way your Canvas looks when you go in. And of course, all you have to do is hit this button here, begin here, to begin the course. This is a good button to use this week. After this week, though, you're probably going to start hitting this button more often. Alternatively, if you want to, instead of hitting these buttons, you can just go over here and hit modules. You know, it's really whatever you prefer. I'm going to start by hitting the begin here button, just so we'll follow the rules, I guess, so to speak. And you can see here, this gives you some information about kind of how we are set up. You won't want to go through this again once you've gotten your bearings, but this kind of explains to you where the material is. You'll see the syllabus here. I also have the syllabus in a different location, and this gives you an overview about where to find stuff. You can see these topics right here in bold are also listed over here. And then here's information about how to reach me. And here's a little bit about Canvas. This gives you some information about how to access Canvas if you've got questions. And of course, you can just click right here to next to get to the next item. So I'm just going to click next at the bottom here. And you can see this is that lecture that we've already done. So I'm not going to spend any more time on that. And this is the PowerPoint that I talk about during our lecture. Again, not going to spend any time on that. And this is our syllabus. So I'm going to just pull up the syllabus here, and we're going to spend a bit of time looking at this just to get our bearings a bit. I'm going to blow this up a bit. This is the name of our course, Employment Practices. I'm going to warn you in the beginning that I'm probably going to refer to it as employment law more often than not. Employment law to me is a lot more logical name for this course. So don't be surprised or think that you've stumbled into the wrong video if I start calling it employment law instead of employment practices. I'm going to scroll and kind of point out some important things. This is the last date to drop this course without getting all kinds of special approval. I hope that no one does need to drop this course, but who knows, maybe you're going to win the lottery and you decide you're going to retire to the south of France and you've decided you don't need to continue learning about employment law. First of all, take me with you. But either way, you are welcome to drop the course if you think that's the best thing for you. Sometimes students are interested in dropping because they don't think they're being successful in the course. I'm going to alert you to something right now. That's a pretty common thing that I see in my class because I do curve grades. So the numbers that you see in the grading section of Canvas are not always the best predictor of how you're doing in a class. As a result, I ask that you contact me before you decide to drop this course if you're dropping it because you don't feel that you're being successful. I'll sit down with you and give you a sense as to where I think that you are performing in the class and what your likely grade will be. I can't make any promises, of course, but many times students are very reassured. They think they were getting an F or a D, and they might well be getting a B or a C under those circumstances. So please consider reaching out to me. Also reach out to me if I can provide academic support for you. I am here to be a resource. Most of the time students don't come see me, and sometimes students don't need the support, and I certainly understand that, but if you are experiencing some challenges with the material, I can do a lot of things to help you be more successful. A small investment of your time with me can lead to pretty significant benefits for you, both in terms of mastery of the material and in terms of your grade performance. Which leads me to my next topic, which is how to find me. right? You can't very well contact me if you can't find me, and we'll find that information on the 3rd page of the syllabus. These are my office hours for this syllabus, excuse me, for this semester. And you'll see that there's really 3 categories of office hours I have. One is I have some hours in my classroom, and those are in the afternoons on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And my office is on the Frisco campus in L building, which is the library building, and I'm on the 2nd floor. My office points towards the quad, and you're certainly welcome to come. You're also welcome to call me during my office hours. My telephone number is down here. I will be in my office pretty much completely from office hours. You know, I might be in the ladies' room, or I might be making photocopies, or I might have a student in my office and we're talking about something pretty serious, and so I don't want to break that flow. But generally speaking, if you call me, there's about a 95% chance that you'll get me. If you don't catch me, you might want to send me a quick email, or you might just want to call me back in 5 minutes. But I'm not restricted to these in-person office hours. I also have Zoom office hours, and these are virtual office hours. Here are the instructions for how to Zoom, how to get in contact with me. It's really, really easy to do. You can do it from your PC, from your Mac, from your Android, from your iPhone. You can even do it from a traditional phone if you would like. Obviously, if you're doing from traditional phone, we're not going to be able to see each other. But these other tools, we can see each other. But for this course, it's probably not that necessary that we actually change documents or things along those lines. It's, again, very, very easy to do. But if you have any difficulties doing it, you're welcome, of course, to email me. And you can see I have a significant amount of time on Wednesday morning. The 3rd bucket I have for office hours is by appointment. I'm happy to schedule additional times, especially for telephone conferences or Zoom conferences. I'm not free on the weekends, but Mondays through Friday afternoons, I have a great deal of openness. So if these times don't work for you, we can figure out some time that will. Let me talk about my email. There are 2 ways to send me documents. In theory, there are 2 ways: send me documents or send me information in a written form at Collin. Let me show you one of those ways. Okay, you can see here there is this little thing called an inbox on Canvas. I wish I could make this go away, because I don't use it. And because I don't use it, I don't look to see, and so I'm probably not going to see it if you leave me a message there. And so you might have said something brilliant or tremendously important to say to me, and it's like it never even happened. Don't use it. The way to communicate with me is not through that messaging tool, not through that inbox, but through my email address. That is C, my first initial, and then Groover, my last name. And you can see Groover spelled a little bit strangely. It's got a V in the middle, at collin.edu. The reason that I prefer email is that I keep your emails forever and ever and ever. And so I will organize them alphabetically in this folder that I have. And not so much probably for students in this class, but since I teach a lot of courses where I have repeat students, it's helpful for me to have all of the emails that Bob Green sent to me in one central location. If we did it through the inbox, and we were to say switch to a different learning management system, or lots of things can happen. I would have to look in multiple places to find those emails from Bob. This is just a lot easier for me to do. And it's easier for you too, in that maybe a year from now, you need to reach out to me and talk to me about something. Well, guess what? You'll have my email. So be sure to use this, not this. Pretend it's not even there. Now, other instructors at Collin might want you to use this, and so I'm not saying there's something inherently bad about it. It's just different faculty have different positions on that. So if you have other instructors, you may want to talk with them to see what makes sense for that particular class. If you don't want to communicate with me during my office hours, please don't leave me a voicemail message. I am in my office very little time. You can see it's 1 hour and 20 minutes on Tuesdays, 1 hour and 20 minutes on Thursdays. I'm really not there any other time. And many times when I'm there, I have students in my office. So sending me a voicemail, it may take several days before I hear your message. Emails, I'm pretty compulsive about. If I'm not teaching and it's not the middle of the night and it's not the weekend, I'm probably going to respond sometimes within minutes. So this is a much quicker way for you to get information. It's much more efficient for me as well. So I would ask that you use this again, unless you're calling me during my office hours. This is the information about the textbook. You will need the Connect tool that is made by the publisher because a significant portion of your grades are via the Connect tool. As far as I'm concerned, you don't actually need a paper version of the employment law. You can just use the Connect tool itself. That has an online version of the book. But the reality is it's probably cheaper for you to buy the loose leaf version of the textbook with the Connect code inside than to just buy the Connect code separately. Again, how you want to do it is completely your choice. The only thing that you have to have is the Connect code. What you do in terms of the textbook is your own call. Now, if you were to buy this textbook and it's not, if it's been used before, then the Connect code will almost certainly have been used. And so that's really not going to help you. So be sure whatever way you're buying it, you are buying a new version of the textbook. There is a way to, let's say you're not sure if you're going to continue in the course. There is a way to use Connect for about 2 weeks without actually purchasing it, to kind of give it a test spin. So that may be something for you to consider doing if you're not quite sure that this is the course that you're most interested in and you're thinking about dropping it. Here is how the grades for the course are going to work out. We have an orientation quiz. It's worth only 1% of your grade. I make it 1% simply to ensure that everybody does it because I think it's a helpful exercise for you to see that, to make sure that you have the information you need to be successful in the course. You need to score at least a 90 on this in order to get your actual score. There are 25 questions on it, which means you can miss 2. If you miss 3, you are below 90%. I mean, that's okay because you can take the test 3 times. So no worries if you miss, if you don't do as well on the first time. Certainly by the 3rd time, though, you want to get pretty serious about doing okay. If you get an 89 or below, so if you miss 3 questions or more, the grade you're going to get is not whatever that grade is. You're going to get a 0 on it. So you're going to lose that entire percent. I mean, it's only 1%, so there's nothing to panic over. But still, why would you want to give up that point if you don't have to? So that's my little incentive to hopefully cause you to do well in the orientation quiz. If you've taken it twice and you just don't seem to be getting it, come to my office hours and we'll do it together. My goal is for everybody to get 100% on it. It's not intended to be tricky or difficult or whatever. If you watch all the videos and you look at the materials, you're going to be just fine. And again, it's open notes, so you can go back and review material as you see appropriate. Discussion boards. As I talked about in our first lecture, you only have to participate in 10. And if you get all of the points, let me just flip on over here to the course for a second. I'm going to go to modules. So each discussion board is worth 5 points. So if you get all 5 points on 10 of your classes, there's no upside for you other than just the joy of learning to continue doing discussion boards. If you only got 3 or 4 points on some discussion boards, that might be a motivation to continue on until you have 10 discussion boards with 5 points each. So that's something to keep in mind. So how do you earn all 10 points on the discussion board? It's pretty darn easy. I'm not going to lie to you. Most students, most of the time, get five points out of the 5. But here are the things that typically trip students up. You have to list your word count at the end of your post. Now, the way I recommend doing that is to pop it into something like Microsoft Word that will do a word count for you on its own. Alternatively, you can count the words yourself. Just know that, please don't lie, because I do count. I have a pretty good eye for guesstimating how long it is, and if it doesn't look like it's about 100 words, I will in fact cut and paste it into my word processor and catch you. And that's not a happy thing. That's an academic dishonesty issue. I don't want to go there. You don't want to go there. If for some reason you have 97 words and you can't think of 3 more words to put into it, post 97 words. Yeah, you're going to lose a point, but it's not the end of the world. So list the number of words on your posts. Your first post needs to be at least 100 words in length. I have all kinds of variety. I have some students who just post 100, and I can, by reading them, I can tell, they say, I really, 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 blah, blah, blah. Clearly they're padding. I have other students who will post 200, 300, 400 word essays. You certainly don't have to go to that level, but a 100 word essay probably ought to be pretty darn good, pretty darn substantive if you're hoping to get all 5 points. Your second post, your response post, this is the one where you're responding to something that a student said, has to be at least 40 words long. Basically, 2 sentences is what we're looking for there. And it shouldn't be, gosh, I really love your post. Gosh, that was so awesome what you just said. It should respond in a meaningful way to what the other person said. You can agree with them, you can disagree with them, but you need to add to the conversation. So be sure to make especially I usually find the weaknesses are in the responsive posts. When you are expressing your opinions, and many of these will ask for opinions, I'm not going to grade your opinion. I don't have to agree with it as long as you are putting forth reasonable explanations as to why you happen to have this perspective. That's fine with me. Another way to lose points is to be inconsiderate or unprofessional. Some of the issues that we're going to have in this course are some real hot button issues in our culture right now. And we will see lots of different perspectives. Everyone in the class, no matter what their perspective, deserves to be treated with courtesy and respect. You don't have to agree with them. You don't have to pretend to agree with them, but you do need to treat them with courtesy and respect. If you don't, that's a problem. I'm not going to continue a situation where people feel that they can't express themselves and present that information that they choose to present. It's essential to the progress of this class. Now, as I said, we're going to be discussing controversial issues, but that doesn't mean that you are required to bare your soul. I recognize that some people might have either no perspective on a particular issue, or they may have a perspective that they don't want to share. So don't feel like this is true confession time and you have to spill your guts for the world to see. Not at all. That's not at all a requirement. In fact, I would argue, for what it's worth, is that HR professionals probably are wise if they don't wear their hearts on their sleeves in that perspective, because they will be dealing with people of a variety of perspectives. One of the things that I find so interesting in the workplace is it is one of the few places we have as a society where people of differing life experiences and viewpoints come together. Let's face it, when we're not working, we hang around people with whom we agree. It might be at the synagogue or the church. It might be at the bar that we like to hang out with friends at. It might be at the political action group that we like. But most of the time, those people are going to have mainly the perspectives we have, at least on whatever the topic is that we're meeting about. But in the workplace, especially if it's a workplace of any size, and if you're an HR manager there, it's got to be somewhat big. There's going to be all kinds of perspectives. There's going to be people who are maybe label themselves progressive. There'll be people who label themselves very conservative, and they're all going to be working together towards bigger goals. And so if you permit yourself to be identified as, oh, she's blank on the political perspective, or he's blank on the political perspective. You may well have turned off some of the group of people that you are there to support. And so I would encourage you, not so much in this class, but I would encourage you in your profession to play a little light on your political views and your social views in the workplace. That doesn't mean you can't have them and that you can't feel strongly about them, but in the workplace, I would recommend that you use a light approach on those types of topics. Okay, so let me move on a little bit. Let's talk about some of the activities that we'll be doing. We've already discussed the discussion board. Let's talk about the LearnSmart activities. I'm going to demonstrate a LearnSmart activity for you. Now, unfortunately, I can't make it look exactly like yours, so this is going to be a little bit different. This is what a LearnSmart activity looks like. It's going to be the first item in the module underneath the heading. So it'll say module, then a number, then it'll have the name of the chapter, and then it'll say chapter 1, period, and then the name of the chapter again. Unfortunately, I can't add the words LearnSmart Activity, but that's what it is. So we're going to click on that. Oh, well, I guess I can't do it since I haven't opened it up yet. So let me go. I'm going to go to, so I'm going about, so don't go, what I'm doing right now, don't attempt to do. It would not be a happy thing for you to do it this way. So what I'm doing is not the right way. So we're going to pretend from here, actually in a second, preview this. So this gives you instructions about how to go through it. And so here we're going to just give a little bit of an experiment. So this is what your experience will be like. You can see all the pages of the chapter over here. And this is our first page. I'm going to go to our next page. You can see down here at the bottom, I can click forward. And you can see the pages are a little bit grayed at this point. So I'm going to read along here, read, and you can see there's some material that is in yellow. This is material that the publisher thinks is especially important for me to know about. They're highlighting it just like I might highlight my own book. You know what? It may be a smart idea for you to note what the publisher highlights here. You may want to highlight in your own textbook. That's, of course, your decision. Anyway, so I might read on a little bit more and look at some more highlighted materials. After I've looked for a while, I might decide, you know what, I'm ready to practice. I'm going to go over here at the very bottom left and click on this, and then I'll have an opportunity to answer some questions. The wonderful thing about LearnSmart is there's no reason in the world why every single student shouldn't get all the points possible. Because if I miss a question, all that happens is I will get an opportunity to re-answer it. So it'll keep on showing up until I get it correctly. Now you might say, well, why don't I just randomly guess? I mean, I suppose you could, you'd eventually get it right. But number one, it would take a long time. And number two, you wouldn't be learning anything. So for those two reasons, I don't recommend you do that. Let's see the first question, just give a flavor. Identify a true statement about the employment-related laws passed by Congress. So the first thing you want to do, obviously read the questions. They tell employers how to manage their employees. They require employers to use race or gender in reaching specific employment decisions. They seek to make the power relationship between an employer and employee fair and equitable. They specify whom employers should or should not hire. I'm going to pick this one, and I'm pretty confident. I'm going to say I think it's true. And look, I got it correct. Now I'm going to hit OK. Let's go to the next one. In the opinion of some scholars, if an employer is prejudiced when hiring employees, he or she selects the most qualified applicants, disregards applicants' gender and race, establishes an equitable employer-employee relationship, or employs a less efficient workforce. Now, obviously this is the answer they want, but I'm going to pick this one because I haven't read the chapter that well. But you know what? I'm not that sure about this, so I'm going to collect this. Oh, wait a second. I missed it. And here's the right answer. So you know what? This question isn't going to come back up immediately, but I may want to make a notation about this. Maybe get out my camera and take a picture of it, so next time it pops up, I will know which answer to select. I'm not going to do any more. You can see down here, it'll tell you how many more is coming. You will find that this activity takes about 20 to 30 minutes per chapter. Okay, so I'm done with this. I'm going to go back to our original document. That's how LearnSmart works. You need to do, again, 10 of these LearnSmart activities. And as I said before, you should get 100% on all of them. If you keep on persevering, you'll eventually get there. The reason that I really like Connect is because of the LearnSmart activities. I don't especially like the quizzes, but the LearnSmart activities, there's a lot of good pedagogical science behind it to indicate this actually works pretty darn good at learning the material. And so that really is, for me at least, the selling feature behind using Connect. So while you only have to do it for 10 of the chapters, I would encourage you to do it for all 16, but that's your decision, of course. Then we have quizzes. Let me show you the quizzes. I'm going to go back here again. You're not going to get into these the way that I'm getting into them right now. You'll just click on the link. Let's go into the quiz. Again, this isn't how you'll be doing it, but I'm going to preview it. So they'll have the question. They won't tell you, obviously. You're getting a free answer out of this. So you can see this is the correct answer. Let's just see it. Taubin is an independent contractor for Panganeer Incorporated. While driving to a meeting at Panganeer's headquarters, Taubin caused a car accident in which a cab driver is hurt. Upon investigation, it was learned. Okay, I guess it was learned would probably be the way I would say that, but in any event, that Taubin was talking to one of the managers at Panganeer over the phone when he was driving on that unfortunate day. Which of the following is true in the context of liability for the accident? The problem is, the reason that Panganeer has no liability is that Taubin was an independent contractor. That's the part that is involved. It's really not important that we could have removed the full-time employee. The important part is that Panganeer is no liability because Taubin is not an employee. Anyway, so you would go through each one of these questions. You can see there's going to be 20 of them. It's described as a quiz, but I don't really treat them as quizzes. It's open book, open notes, no time limits. You need to work independently, but other than that, you're free to use whatever resources that you can. For the most, well, this isn't like the LearnSmart. It is possible to get less than 100 points, assuming the 100% on these. If you persevere and work very carefully at it, you'll find that you'll miss very few questions on your own. You're also welcome to come see me and we'll work on the questions together if you'd like. Okay, so that's the quizzes. So I'm using the term quiz here, but it's not so much of a quiz. Really, our only test vehicles are going to be the midterm examination and the final examination. This is the hard part of the course. Up to this point, pretty easy stuff, to be honest with you. And I like to be really candid about that because sometimes students get into the mode of, gosh, eat a piece of cake to get, I'm getting a good discussion grade, discussion board grade, I'm getting a good LearnSmart grade, I'm doing okay on quizzes. I don't really need to do much to prep for the midterms and the finals. The midterms and the finals are significantly harder. You can do pretty well on all the other stuff and really be disappointed in your midterm and final examination grades. So I'm going to ask that you devote more energy to these, recognizing they are more challenging. And we'll talk about some tools that you can use to prep for it in just a couple of minutes. The midterm is comprehensive up until the date of the midterm. I'm just going to scroll ahead here and look at the calendar. You can see that the midterm covers modules 1 through 4 and 6 through 9. The reason why module 5 isn't on this list is because it's an optional module. there is just so much content in employment law. We don't have time to cover every single topic in a deep way. So Module 5 is optional. You will certainly be able to do the assignments if you want to, and there will be some questions on the midterm that would be extra credit relating to the affirmative action module, but they would not be something that you have to know in order to get 100 if you were performing very, very highly on the tests. A Module 10 is also fitting into that category. It's optional. Again, for a similar reason, it's in Texas not an especially important topic, not because the issue isn't important, but because there really aren't laws in this area in Texas, as we're focusing on the what do employers have to do. So we'll talk about it, but it's not something that you'll be having a test over. Module 11 we will actually do before the midterm, but I like to delay actually putting it on the midterm because I want to give you lots of opportunities to come and see me and ask questions. This is an important topic. It will be on the final. It's just not on the midterm. Okay, let me go back to the final examination covers the entire course other than those 2 modules that are extra credit. Let me go back and look at the breakdown. So often, in my experience, students don't pay careful attention to this. This is probably, in many respects, the most important part of the syllabus because it tells you where you ought to be investing your time. I'll have students who worry about a particular discussion board post. I mean, it's just not going to affect your grade. Yeah, if you never do a single discussion board post, you're giving up 5%. But even there, the most you're going to drop is a letter grade, and there's even a 50-50 chance you won't be doing that. So this isn't what you ought to be stressing over. LearnSmart activities, since you're submitting 10, each LearnSmart activity is only worth 2% of your grade. If you only get to complete 9, no big deal. It's okay. Quizzes, similarly, each one of those quizzes of those 10 that you need to complete, again, you can do more than 10, but since you complete, it's worth 2% of your grade. So let's say there's a question on the quiz that you really just feel strongly the publisher got wrong. You're welcome to come to me, and I'm happy to hear you, and I can challenge the question, and if it is in fact incorrect, we can get McGraw-Hill to change it for a future semester. But the reality is a single quiz question, there is 0% chance it will affect your grade. So please don't worry or stress about those items. That's not where you ought to be investing your energies. You ought to be investing your energies in learning the material. Don't get focused on the details and miss the big picture. When we get to the midterms and the finals, that's when things start really counting and really mattering. And so that's where you ought to be investing your concern. But even there, an individual question, even 2 or 3, isn't going to impact your grade. Okay. Let's talk about Proctor U. There are 2 ways to take my midterm and final examinations. One is to go to the testing center on the Frisco campus. The building in which you'll find that is Founders Hall. It's on the 2nd floor, immediately above the bookstore. What you will need if you choose to take the test there is you'll need a student ID, and you'll need to check the hours of the testing center. Generally speaking, their hours are 8 or 9 in the morning to 9 at night, Mondays through Thursdays. Saturdays, they, I think, close at 3-ish, could be 2 or 3. And then on Saturday, they have somewhat limited hours, something like 8 to 3 or something like that. They don't go into the evening, and there are no hours on Sunday. The testing center will not allow you to begin a test in the last hour the testing center is open. And honestly, these tests are long tests, and so you will want a complete hour. So it's not an altogether bad thing in your circumstances. But so be sure to show up before then. And you do need that student ID. The college won't accept a driver's license or some other identification. So that is probably the way 90% of the students, maybe even more than that, will take the test. Sometimes students say, can I take the test at another testing center? I am happy to oblige you with that. When I submit the test to the Frisco Testing Center, that's where my office is, that's where I'm going to submit it, I will request that it be made available to the McKinney Testing Center and to the Spring Creek Testing Center in Plano. And you can absolutely go there. But I want to flag something for you. I have taught here for over 8 years, and I have submitted many, many tests to be open in all campuses. And sometimes it works seamlessly, and sometimes it doesn't. So if you want to take it on the Plano campus, before you go, be sure to call to make sure that they think they have that test. If they don't, then say, hey, I know my instructor submitted the sheet so that it would be available to me here. Would you mind calling the Frisco campus and asking them to send you the information? My experience is they'll be glad to accommodate that. If they refuse, then you can call the Frisco campus and say, hey, I want to take this test on the Plano campus. I think you have the sheet. Would you mind pulling it up? And if it does say that the test can be taken on the Plano campus, would you mind re-emailing that or re-faxing it to that campus? Those would be my suggestions. If you try those two things and for whatever reason you just can't seem to make the system work, you're welcome to reach out to me at that point. Keep in mind, though, that I am usually not reachable on the weekends. And so a large number of students choose to take tests on the weekends. And so I won't, where I spend my weekends, I don't have internet, I don't have cell phone reception. So I just wouldn't know that you had the question till Monday morning in many cases. So do a little bit of self-help if you really want to take on the other campus. And if it's there, there's no problem. Worst case scenario is if you can't somehow or another persuade them to allow you to take the test on that campus, is to go to the Frisco campus. So those are some options. Now let's say that you are on the south of France. You did win the lottery and you don't want to come back to Collin County to take the midterm or the final examination. No worries. You have the option of taking the test remotely through the Proctor U tool. There's a few things I want to share about this. The first thing I want to flag is that there is a fee for this service. It's anywhere from about $10 to I think about $35. Probably your fee will be in the $20 to $30 range. It's all based upon the length of time you need to complete the test. You can do the Proctor, assuming that your computer is set up, you've got a webcam, you've got a sufficiently recent computer that it's got all the bells and whistles you need, then you can do that from your home or from some other location. You will need to have, let's say you have children, you will need to have somebody supervising your children. They can't come into the testing area. You'll need to have an area that is separated, that is quiet, that doesn't have other people coming in and out of. But you're welcome to do that. There is one thing I want to flag, though, and this is something that many times students do miss, so I want to really, really, really emphasize this because I don't want you to be disappointed. And that is, you have to let me know that you want to take the test through Proctor U at least 10 days before the start of the window. The reason for that is you've got to do some stuff and I've got to do some stuff to make that happen. And so I really need those 10 days and you need some of those 10 days to get that done. Don't contact me in the middle of the testing period and say, I really want to take it and the Proctor U. That's not going to work out for us. And so you're welcome to send me a text or not a text, I'm sorry, an email right now if you want to. So you may want to pause right now and send me that email saying, I want to use Proctor U. Otherwise, and again, you don't have to take Proctor U for both tests. You can take it for one or the other. Now, when I do provide these tests, I have a long window. It's typically 7 days, at least for the midterm. For the final, sometimes it's a bit shorter, but I always am sure to include a Saturday and several evenings. So you will have lots and lots of options. So if you're thinking to yourself, I always work every Tuesday night, And what if the professor schedules it for Tuesday night? Well, no, that won't be the only time. So you'll have some options with respect to that. As we get closer, I'll be happy to give you more, but you'll have a whole week. So unless you're going to be traveling that week, there isn't a reason that you have to use ProctorU. You may choose to, but you don't have to. Another thing about the window that I give for midterms and finals is because I give such a lengthy window, I do not permit makeups. You have lots of opportunities to take the test. And so let's imagine that there was a 7-day window, and on the 6th day of the window, you're unfortunately in a bad car accident. You're in the hospital and you just can't come to take your test. You're just not able to. And you say, but I was planning on taking it on the 7th day. Well, unless you can provide documentation for the entire period that says that you are incapacitated, I'm not going to be able to allow you to do the makeup. For that reason, I encourage you to take tests early in the window, in the period that we have. Don't wait until the last couple of days, because life happens, and I'd hate for you to miss out on taking the test. If you miss a midterm or the final, you can see we're seeing major impacts upon your grade now. It's pretty difficult to get anything other than a D if you miss the midterm, and you're probably not going to pass the course if you aren't able to take the final examination. So keep those things in mind. I certainly want you to be successful, and I want to let you know how you can go about doing that. One of the things when I came to Collin that I was so impressed by was the level of intellectual rigor that students have here, and by their level of commitment to their studies. I continue to be impressed by that. The one thing, however, I am not impressed by, and of course there's lots of exceptions, but generally speaking, is the quality of the emails that I get. That's an especially important issue for HR managers. You really have to bring your A game to emails. And so one of the things that I am going to help you with this semester is really developing a habit of writing emails in a professional way. I don't do this because I'm mean. I mean, maybe I am mean, but that's not why I'm doing it. It's actually a lot more work for me. So if you send me an email that doesn't fit these criteria that I'm about to say, what I'll do is I'll send it back to you and I'll say, wait a second, why don't you go back to page 6 of the syllabus and review that, and then clean this email up, and then I'll be glad to help with it. I don't like sending that email. It doesn't make me sound very nice. And you don't like to receive that email because it's not going to feel very nice for you to get it. Plus, you're not going to get the information that you need. So let's make a deal that you're going to follow these guidance. Maybe even right now you might want to pause right now and print up this page or take a picture of this page or whatever you want to do. And before you send me an email, go ahead and review these instructions. My suggestion would be for you to adopt this style in all of your classes and just generally in your life. Once you get in the habit of doing this, you don't have to think about it. It's second nature, and this is going to pay so many important dividends in your career. In a way, what does it matter how you email your instructor? I'm not your employer. I'm not going to give you a raise, but I'm trying to give you some help to educate you how to be successful in the real world. Honestly, if you leave this course and you were a poor emailer before, and at the end of the semester you know how to email professionally, that's a huge win for you, because many of the people with whom you are competing for jobs won't have that skill set. So please take this seriously. Now let's just go through briefly what I'm expecting. First of all, the first question to ask whenever you use email is email the right tool? Email is a tremendous tool. It is awesome. I use it all the time, and so I'm not anti-email by any means. But like most tools, it doesn't do everything. And so sometimes what you need is a good old-fashioned conversation. Now, email is still useful in that situation because it's wonderful to schedule that conversation. But if a student, say, were to send me an email saying, well, I just don't get the idea of, let's see, I just don't understand affirmative action plans. Can you help explain it to me? That's not an email exchange. That's what's going to result in a really good conversation between the two of us where there's a give and take. Well, I'll probably ask you, well, what about it is confusing? Well, I just don't understand this whole government involvement and what this, okay, well, let's talk about some reasons for this or this. And we'll go down in that line. There'll be a back and forth. And I will ask you questions to get a better sense as to what part of the issue is confusing. And then I will be able to get feedback from you whether my explanation has been clear. If we were to attempt that discussion via email, we would both get really frustrated. It would take both of us a lot longer, both in terms of the time commitment we have to do to communicate, as well as the number of days it would take to really get that clarity. So the first thing that I would ask you to consider is this something that can be resolved via email? Good things for emails are things that can be answered by the person in 3 sentences. This is, I actually have a bullet here about this one. Yes. Can the recipient completely answer the question in 3 sentences or yes? Another way of thinking about it is, can the recipient come up with an answer in 5 minutes or less? If he or she can't, it doesn't mean that that person won't still be able to get you the answer. It's just email's not the way to do that. It's much more productive for you to say, hey, I've got some questions about that. When's a good time for us to talk? And then we'll have that 5-minute or 10-minute or 30-minute conversation, whatever we need to get that resolved. But email isn't the way to do it. So the 3 sentences or less test is a good way to consider it. Another thing that comes up pretty regularly is that students will ask me a question and about the course, and I will think to myself, I know what the answer is. It was covered in orientation. It's in the syllabus. It's in this point. It's in that point. This student either has forgotten the information or never knew it. I'm going to, of course, refer the student to the orientation module and say something like this. I've covered this material in the orientation module. Please refer to it. If you'd like to talk in more detail, we can schedule a time and I will answer any questions that you have. I do that again not to be unpleasant or to make it difficult, but just to reinforce the idea that this is your course. You own this course. You are the person who's going to determine how successful you are. And I want to empower you to be that successful person. So if it's already available on Canvas, I'm going to direct you to those tools. I teach 7 courses during most semesters, and so if you don't know the answer that I've provided, I'm not going to remember exactly what the answer is for the course. So I'd have to do the same type of digging that I'm asking you to do. I'm happy to do it with you, but we'll need to have a conference call, and together you and I will explore until we find the answer if you need that assistance. Okay, so when you get started, you'll want to establish a subject line that makes sense. One thing you'll want to be sure to include is the course information here. And I actually have the so you would include this, or you could say employment practices, whatever you prefer. You'll also want to explain kind of what your question relates to. So you'll have the course identifier as well as what the topic is. This allows the recipient to know how high a priority the question is. Then you'll want to have a salutation, and this is the correct form for business salutations. You wouldn't actually put the quotations mark in it. You'll start with dear, Then you'll have some kind of honorific. It could be Mr., Ms., Doctor. In my case, obviously, it's professor. You can spell out the whole word or you can abbreviate it. By the way, while I do have a doctorate, I have a law degree, I have a Juris Doctorate. I'm not, attorneys choose not to use the term doctor in front of their name. So professor, or if you don't want to use professor for whatever reason, Ms. would be fine. And then my last name. Obviously, you're going to spell it right because I know that you want to leave a good impression. And then you end it with a colon. A comma is great for personal correspondence, but not for professional communications. So this is the format. Just use this one all the time. Obviously, change the names when you're dealing with other individuals. So this is the greeting to have. And then you'll want to write your text. I'm going to give you a little hint. I have almost never gotten an email from a smartphone that was well written. And you know what? It's just really hard to spell correctly and do all those things when you're working on that tiny keyboard. So don't put yourself at a disadvantage. Go ahead and work on a tablet or a laptop or a PC so that you can put together a really good looking email, one that you can be proud of, that creates a good impression in the recipient. And of course, you're going to want to make sure it's typo free, that there's no grammar problems. If you're typing on a computer, especially if that computer has tools such as Microsoft Word, you can actually cut and paste it into that to check your spelling and grammar and things along those lines. A good hint for checking your material is to read it out loud. It's so easy to miss a word or to have a missing comma or something like that. But when you read it to yourself, especially if you read it aloud, you'll be able to hear that missing word. Another thing that reading aloud helps with is that you may have a question that makes perfect sense in your head because you've been dealing with this issue for several minutes or maybe even an hour or longer. But your recipient is really not connected to that situation, or at least hasn't recently been connected to that situation. So you have to give that person a fair amount of background information and to put it in context. One way to help with that is to take screenshots or things along those lines so that it makes a little bit more sense to the recipient. But just keep in mind that that recipient is new to this issue, and so here the recipient is going to need a lot of information. Now you may think to yourself, well, why do I care so much about the recipient? Well, you care so much about the recipient because you want something from that recipient. If you're asking me a question, you want that answer. And so anything you can do to make it easy for me to get you the answer that you need is a win for you. You're being nice to me, but you're really doing it for a self-interested motivation. Because if you send me a question that is unclear, I can't answer it. And so I'm going to have to send you back an email. Then you're going to have to, we're going to go back and forth until you ultimately get to a clear email. And you will think at the end of that process, gosh, if only I had just invested maybe 4 or 5 more minutes on this, I could have avoided all this hassle. And so be smart and you'll get a result that I think you'll be more pleased with. Then of course, after your body of your text, you're going to conclude with, I would say sincerely is a good choice, sincerely, comma, then your first and last name, and you'd want to include your Cougar Mail. You should send your emails, by the way, from Cougar Mail. You can also CC your personal email if you would like that as well. Okay, so those are just some pointers to keep in mind when you're doing your emails to me, and ideally to your if you're currently employed, to your boss at work, to your coworkers, to potential employers, to other instructors. To your significant other, don't feel like you have to follow these rules, but other people, probably it's a good idea too. So here is our list of activities for the semester. You can see that we will be covering 1 or 2 modules a week. The first 16 modules are from the textbook, but I have some additional materials at the end that are not from the textbook that I'll be pulling from other resources. So just alerting you to that fact. Now I'm going to go back to Canvas. I'm actually going to get started back at home. So we're going to start at the beginning point, begin here, and I'm going to go through the next couple hits. That's that lecture. Here's the PowerPoint. Here's the syllabus. Okay, so going forward, this is where we're in new territory. Again, here's information about how to reach me. Again, you can find this information on my syllabus. And here's the orientation quiz. This is not current. There's actually 25 questions. Then here's information about Canvas. So be on the lookout for information about or how to purchase the book. As I said before, the best way honestly to do it is through the bookstore. They're going to have the right edition of the book. It's going to be new and it's going to have access to Canva to Connect. The thing I care about you having is access to Connect. If you can get that access through some other mechanism, that's fine with me. But I think you'll be hard-pressed to get a better deal financially than through our bookstore. Here's some information about how to use Canvas, various tools. I'm happy to help, so feel free to come and see me if you'd like some assistance, especially if you have a laptop and you can bring it. We can figure out what might be going awry. I am not, though, a guru about technological things. I do find maneuvering in Canvas myself, but there can definitely be problems that are beyond my skill set, and certainly there can be programming problems that you would need to talk to somebody in the e-learning center to really get those problems solved. And then here's some information about Connect. You will need to be using the Canvas system to go into Connect. What you won't want to do is you won't want to enter Canvas, you won't want to enter Connect through any mechanisms other than Canvas. The reason for that is if you enter Connect on its own, not going through Canvas, is that your grades will not automatically transfer. Now, if you accidentally do that, or let's say Canvas is down and you really want to do Connect, you will need to let me know. I can transfer the grades manually, but I will need to know. I won't know to check unless you tell me, and I will do that, but I will need to know. It will show up as a 0 otherwise. Here's a little bit of information about memory palaces. If you've done any kind of memory work in the past, you're probably already familiar with it. This is a way of organizing your memory. This course is much more like the first semester of French or Spanish or something like that, and much less like, say, calculus or physics. And by that I mean is there's a lot of stuff to learn, but none of it is really that hard. It's just a lot. And that's what makes it hard. It's like, when you're taking the first semester of Spanish, there's a ton of words. And you know what? Most of those words, well, maybe not Spanish. Let's say you were learning Japanese. Most of those words, you won't sound anything like English words. Whatever the word is for mother well, maybe not mother, but whatever the word is for, say, door in Japanese, it's probably not going to sound like door. Or puerto or something like that, some word that you might know from a different language. And so you can't really guess. I mean, you might be the smartest person ever, and you can't guess what the word for door is in Japanese. You got to memorize it. And that's kind of what this class is. There's a lot of stuff you have to memorize. There's no way you're going to be able to really guess a lot and get this right. It just requires the hard work to memorize. It's not like calculus, though. Again, it's not hard stuff. You're not, once you have that stuff locked in your brain, you're going to do great in the course. There's just not a problem with folks who know the stuff who can't figure out the answers, because the questions pretty much write themselves. And so there isn't more that you need to know. If you know the information, you're going to do great in the course. So here's a couple of things to keep in mind. One thing is that you'll need to have a system of organizing your brain. Now, once you come to my office, you'll discover this about myself, but I'll be really candid. I'm very disorganized with paper. But my brain, when I'm learning something, really strives to be organized. Not because I especially value organization, but because I know that that's the way to save myself time. Or being organized about how you put your memories, your facts that you're learning in your brain is going to make it much easier to move those memories from short-term memory to long-term memory, and will also help you greatly in retrieving those memories, especially during stressful times like tests. This stuff is the real deal. You do this stuff, you can dramatically drop the amount of time you're going to have to spend studying. So I'm not here to say, boy, this is great because I'm getting some kind of commission or something like this. This is great because you are going to buy yourself time if you're smart about this. And so my suggestion is when you're reading the textbook, when you're doing the LearnSmart activities, develop a memory palace. And by a memory palace, I mean, it doesn't have to literally be a memory palace, but say, okay, I know all this stuff is related to the Fair Labor Standards Act. So I'm going to get all those ideas organized in my Fair Labor Standards Act room in my palace. And then I'm going to have a room that's devoted to race discrimination. And then I'm going to have and everything that is related to that topic is going in that room. And so one of the most important things you're going to be doing when you're reading the textbook is you're going to be designing your palace. You're going to be having all of your rooms. You're going to walk through those rooms. You're going to imagine yourself when you're in the Fair Labor Standards Act room, you're picking up the facts. Oh, that's what that fact is. I'm putting it next to this fact, or I'm organizing it in this way or that way. You're going to have the bones of the house. You're going to have the rooms and the walls, but you're not going to have all the facts yet. You're going to fill in the facts as you do the quiz and as you watch the lectures. In the lectures, I'm not going to be giving you the memory palace. That's your job to do independently. I'm going to be helping you fill in the furniture, the knickknacks in each one of those rooms. But if you don't have the memory palace constructed, and you're just randomly assigning, oh, there's one more fact, I don't know where to put it, so I'll put it over there. Well, I'll put this other unrelated fact next to it. You're never going to find that fact in your brain. So you'll need to be systematic about that. And that may mean when you're watching the lecture that you have to stop and say, wait a second, what fact did Groover just say? How is that related? Where am I going to put that in my memory palace? Where am I going to put that in my notes? So anyway, this is optional. You certainly don't have to do it, but it is a tremendous time saver for you. This is going to, not just in this course, but in any memory-based course, something like French or Spanish or Japanese, you will find it very, very useful. So this is just one example of how you might do a memory palace. This is a cheat sheet. I hope that you will look at this every single week. This might be the single most important part of the orientation because it goes through what you got to do. You got to do that LearnSmart activity. And it tells you how many times. Let's say you're not sure. Was it 8 or was it 12 times? I don't remember. Go back to your cheat sheet because guess what? It's right here, 10 times. Watch the video lectures. I don't have fill in the blank study guides in this one, so I'm going to actually remove this language here. But I will have, but you will, they won't be fill in the blank, but you will have study guides, and so which I'll show you in a few minutes. So you will want to have those available, maybe print them out and take notes as you do this. As soon as I will have other videos also posted. Now my videos will be relatively long. These videos that aren't me speaking will probably be in the 3-10 minute, that type of range. You may find as you watch some of these videos that a question comes up. I didn't quite understand how this works or whatever. You certainly can send me a private email or visit my office hours, but you can also post it on a discussion board. I'll show you in a second. And that way, I will be able to answer it more broadly. If you ask me a personal question, I look at it and go, gosh, that's a great question. I hadn't even thought about that. What I may do is send out a blast announcement, or I may move your question to the questions discussion board. If I do that, of course, I will not include your name in it. So be used to looking there periodically to see if there's questions that might be helpful. You'll also want to participate in the discussion board. And again, you'll want to do this at least 10 times. And there's a little reminder about the 100 words for your first post, the 40 words for your second post, and that you need to list the number of words. Then you'll take the chapter quiz. Again, you'll want to do 10 of these. Then we'll look at the not for a grade study activities in a couple minutes. These are optional. You do not have to do these, but this is what students who want to get an A are going to do. If you are a strong student and a B is what you want, you might not have to do these. If you aren't as strong academically and you want to be, you're probably going to want to spend some time doing these activities. Then I talk a little bit about the Proctor U process down here. Here's some resources, lots of different ways you can get connected to Colin and to help you with issues that might come up, both personal as well as academic. Here is that question form that I was talking about a second ago. So let's say you have a question. You hit the reply button and you type in the question. If you have a question, please enter it here. Thanks. Professor Gruber. And I'm going to hit post. There you have it. Oops. Going to edit it. Dear students, if you have a question, please enter it here. Thanks, Professor Gruber. Now we're going to go to the next one. Here's the boring old copyright statement. And then this is, I think, a little video. We'll click on this. It'll take you in to watch a video. Oh, no, I'm sorry. This is Littler Mendelson is a very prominent employment law firm. If you practice or are an HR manager for very long, you will hear about Littler. It's probably the most prominent law firm in the United States that specializes in employment and labor issues. And this is an annual employer survey that they prepared. It's kind of a marketing tool. You might find it interesting. It's not assigned reading. I just wanted to make it available to you. And then here's a little video to get started. You will want to put your post on the subject and explain why you're taking this course. And your post should be at least 100 words. You will want to include your word count at the end. I'm going to treat this as a discussion board post. So you will actually have, this one won't be due this first week. It'll be due by the second week. I'll add the due date in a little bit. So you'll actually have, this will be, in 1 week, you'll have 2 posts. And then here is our first module. So I'm going to go click now to modules. And all those things that I just went through, you will be able to see. Now let's look at a module. This is an example of a module. This is that LearnSmart activity. You can see the due date here. You can see that the due date is December 9th. The due date for all LearnSmart activities is December 9th. This is the Sunday before the week of final exams. So you really have a lot of freedom about when to do the LearnSmart activities. I do that so that if there's some technical problem, there's an outage or whatever, you aren't going to be out of luck. But I don't recommend that you wait until the final week. I recommend that you do things as they come up each week. And you can go back and review the materials as you prepare for the individual tests. But that's your decision about how you want to allocate your time. The discussion board is going to be open for a week. That particular discussion board opens on a Monday at 12:01 a.m. and it closes at 11:59 p.m. on that Sunday. So you have 7 days to participate in the discussion board. Let's just look at an example so we can see how that works. I'm going to open up introductions. I'm going to leave student view so we can actually see. So this is what the discussion looks like. Click on reply and talk about yourself. So you'll click on this button to do your little presentation. What your major is, why you're taking the course, anything else you'd like to share. Your introductory post should be at least 100 words. So this is just like all the other discussion boards. And you should include the count at the end of the post. Here's the example of my post. Then you'll want to reply to at least one student's post. It should be 40 words long. You should include your word count. Now this, I said before, your reply post shouldn't be fluffy. It should be substantive. I'm going to be honest. This is going to be a little fluffy. I require a reply post here just to get everyone to read posts. You certainly can reply to more than one student if you would like. I'm just going to require the one. Let me go back to our modules. Actually close this module. Okay, next up is the PowerPoint for this course. Now I list the information in PowerPoint 2 different places. If you prefer looking at PowerPoints, you can use this. If you prefer looking at Word documents, you can look here. I'm just going to open this up so you can see what I'm talking about. Here's the PowerPoint. These are PowerPoints that I've written. They will have a lot of overlapping material to the textbook, but they will also include additional material and they will be arranged in different order. So don't feel like, oh, well, gosh, I've already read the textbook. I don't need to be thinking about the PowerPoint. There will be things in the PowerPoint that you're responsible for that you will not find in the textbook. I mean, if you're shooting for a B or a C, then yeah, the textbook is going to be adequate for your purposes. But if you're looking for an A, you will want to spend some time with this PowerPoint. Let me show you the other version of the PowerPoint that isn't in PowerPoint format. I mean, it literally is the same thing. I just organized it to help you save a few trees. This is in a Word document format. Again, same material. This study guide, although there are no blanks in it, this study guide is what I recommend you use when you watch the lectures. And here you can add content. Let's say when I'm talking about executive orders. I might use an example of an executive order, so you might make a little notation here. You might also, when you print out this document, make it bigger or make your margins narrower so there's more space for you to write stuff in, because as you can see, there's not a lot of extra space. That's kind of a judgment call for you to make. An alternative would be for you to type up this. So you can get this document, it's a Word document, you can add content. One of the nice things about having taped lectures is that you can pause me whenever you want to. And go back and listen to it again if you didn't catch it, or just take your notes and then turn me back on when you get to that point. So you can use either one of these tools depending upon your preferences. You'll see when I actually do my lecture that I will have highlighted a lot of these slides. Now, in the PowerPoint I post, I don't have them highlighted. Oops, here we go. Here the material in the PowerPoint isn't highlighted, but when I actually do the lecture, a fair amount of the material I do highlight. Those are my notes. Those are the things I especially want to emphasize. You'll see that in the lecture, and so you might want to, actually I don't highlight them, I italicize them. The things that I italicize in the PowerPoint that I use actually in the lecture may be things that you want to highlight or use in that lecture. I haven't taped my lecture for Module 1 yet, but this is where it will be. And you can see I have a little video. I did not do this video. This is a little few-minute video that kind of talks about this topic. That is assigned. Most of those are really short. And then here is again that quiz. You can see all the stuff down here. Pretend you don't see. That's a dust collecting in the course. This is the final item that you would see if you were a student in the class. Let me just go back and show you what that looks like. Oops. So you can see the final item that you see is not for a grade, study activity for Module 1. You may recall earlier I talked about this thing. Students have the option of practicing and studying for tests by using module-based question banks. Many of the test questions for the midterm and final examinations are from these test banks. Students can find these test banks at the bottom of many of the course modules. These test banks do not count as questions and are optional activities. So this is what it is. It's called Not for a Grade Study Activity. And you'll see them, I have them for, I haven't been able to complete them and post them for every single module. I think I have them through module 10 at this point, still continuing to work. I actually have a later due date here, but there really isn't a due date at all because it's not for a grade. You don't ever have to do a single one of these, or you can do every single one of them. You can do them multiple times. It's completely your decision. So here we go. I'm going to click on this. We'll go in. I have to leave student view. Here we'll preview it. Okay, so this would be an example of a question. The law relating to the employment relationship is based upon the traditional law called master and servant. That happens to be true. Then I would go to the next one. In an agency relationship, one person acts on behalf of another. I'm going to say that's false. I'm going to submit the quiz. I only got one of those questions right. So when you are doing the activity, you will want to be looking up the answers, taking notes. A question that you're not sure about, maybe you don't have time for, you might want to jot down and return to. Here's instructions about how to do it to make sure that you are in good shape. Most of my test questions are going to be pulled from these modules. I'm not going to say all of them, but many of them are. Now, sometimes students think to themselves, well, I'm going to outsmart the system. I'm going to remember that wherever I see, let me just go forward to, we'll say, to question 15. Let's see. Here. Well, whenever I see something called Bob operating business, I'll know, and I happened to have researched this when I found that the answer was false. Well, I'll just remember Bob operating business false. Well, that's not going to work in my class because I probably have not 50, but several questions with Bob operating business in it. I do that on purpose so you can't just memorize whenever I see the name Sheila, it must be true. Also, when you look at multiple choice questions, let me scroll, see if there's a multiple choice. Yeah, here. You can't, let's say you decide that B is the right answer. We don't just remember, okay, this question, the answer is B, because these answers will rotate. What's B for you on this go around may be D next time or A next time. You have to actually know the content. Okay, so I think that we have covered the material that we need to. I thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. I hope that you have as much fun with this material as I do. I have a real enjoyment with employment law, and hopefully I have communicated that and have shared and will share that with you over the course of this semester. People do the craziest things at work. Many times it's heartbreaking, many times it's entertaining, but if nothing else, it leads to lively stories. So if you are just beginning this journey, I suggest you start keeping a diary because you will have some wonderful stories and some sad stories to tell others. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to seeing you in class. Bye-bye.